In this film, I just went to a private screening of it, the film I worked on over the summer. There's a space where, my character's a veteran, and his son asks him, "How come you don't talk about that much?" And my line is, "There's not much to tell." But there's space there to think of something very specific, right, before you deliver that line. And I was so glad when I saw it on the screen that it worked, right? Now I call that now obviously I filled it with something, but I call it a blank space because I don't get to decide what people think I'm thinking of. So it's a blank, and people get to fill it with whatever they think I'm thinking of.
That was the voice of New Jersey theater kid turned Marine turned punk rocker turned Hollywood actor Michael Broderick. And it is my absolute delight to have him on as the guest of this episode of the Page and Stage podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jason Cannon. Before diving into my conversation with Michael, a brief Page and Stage plug. This podcast is only one part of my story coaching work. Go check out pageandstage.art. That's pageandstage.art. And there you'll find not just every previous episode of this podcast, but also the archive of my weekly newsletter, which is full of tips, tricks, inspiration, and encouragement for storytellers of all stripes. You can sign up for free and get the newsletter directly into your inbox each Friday, as well as every new podcast right into your inbox every other Monday. Everything is free. But if you find value in all this storytelling content, you can financially support me at pageandstage.art or forward any of the newsletters or podcasts to other story-loving friends, or hire me outright as your personal story coach. If you're working on a memoir, play, or speech, I cannot wait to hear your story. Now, let me tell you a bit more about my awesome guest, Michael Broderick. After serving in the Marines from 1986 to 1990, Michael went to New York City and spent 10 years playing guitar in the never-quite-dead punk rock scene of Manhattan's Lower East Side. In 2001, Michael changed gears and began a successful voiceover career. In 2004, he moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting for film and television. He booked his first television role on the Smash Fox series 24, and followed that with roles on Justified, NCIS, True Detective, New Amsterdam, The Terminal List, and many others. Michael is also active in the military veteran space. He has served on the board of directors for GallantFew.org and Veterans in Media and Entertainment. He is also the lead actor in Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret, which is where I got to work with him and witness his courage and generosity. Here we go with my conversation with Michael Broderick. I'm here online with Michael Broderick, who, as you heard in the intro, is a Marine turned punk rocker turned Hollywood star. It's an amazing track. Michael, thanks so much for hopping on with me today.
Oh, man, it's great to spend some time together with you, Jason. Off the road, I guess, right?
Yeah, off the road. First time,
Yeah.
not on the road.
That's right. So I think you may have overstated things. Yes, I was a Marine. Yes, punk, I played in a punk band. Hollywood star might be pushing it.
Well, I mean, in your bio, it says that just over a year ago, in 2023, you were inducted into, I'm going to say this wrong, into the Manasquan High School Academic Hall of Fame.
Manasquan.
You grew up in New Jersey, Manasquan? So
Manasquan.
you are Manasquan. Point being, you are now in a Hall of Fame. So I think Hollywood star may be underselling it a little bit, Michael.
Okay. Well, and I will say this. I am proud to join Jack Nicholson in that Hall of Fame.
I know. Did he go to your high school?
He did. Yeah, that's why he's in my high school Hall of Fame.
It's not an honorary thing.
No. We just really like him.
Right.
We're just fans. No,
my high school claim to fame at Lafayette Jefferson, go fighting Broncos, is Axl Rose. He didn't actually graduate from Lafayette, Jeff, but he did attend.
There you go. Well, Jack was the theater's name, the Jack Nicholson Theater.
Oh, wow.
The first play I did there was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh,
and it's funny because I think they told everybody that he was going to come to one of the shows, so every night was packed. And no, he didn't come. However, I will say this: in about 10, maybe 15 years ago, he did come to. They did it again. He came to a performance of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's almost like your own little Waiting for Guffman like scene right
It
there.
was. It literally was. Great reference.
Well, I got to say too, I mean, you go to Jack Nicholson's high school, you're now in the Hall of Fame with him. And I think this whole acting thing must have been in the stars, because didn't your mother name you in honor of someone pretty famous as well? Like your middle name?
Well, my middle name is Sean, and unbeknownst to my late father, it was because my mom had a crush on Sean Connery. And yeah, she never told my dad, but that's where my middle name Sean came from.
So it was destiny. It was
her little secret.
Yeah. So you were doing theater in high school. So this is actually something you and I have not talked about before. And for everyone out there, Michael is the lead performer in Last Out, plays Danny Patton. So I've had the incredible honor of working with Michael the last several months, getting this show put up and touring around. And I know anyone who's listening to this podcast has probably seen the multiple times I've pushed out Last Out, forcing it down everyone's throat. But Michael's the man. Michael's the one carrying the lead role load there. A wonderful marriage of kind of your entire arc here. So I want to end up with your acting career, but let's go back, because if you were doing theater in high school, but then what led to you joining the Marines for 4 years? What was that origin story for you?
Yeah, I was doing not just theater in high school, but also before that in community theater and stuff. I just always kind of was drawn to that. I was kind of just a screw up in high school. You know, I always tested well, but I don't think I did. I've never done term paper. I've never, I got a bunch of zeros for just not doing work. I managed to graduate. I decided I needed a kick in the butt. So I picked the Marine Corps because, like I said, I was kind of a joker, and I was 130 pounds, maybe back then.
Soaking wet.
I figured, 5'10" at the time, 130 pounds. And I figured that would freak my friends out. So I chose the Marine Corps. But I did feel, I felt a duty to serve as well. I could tell a bit about that origin story when that was kind of instilled in me. This was the Reagan era, and it was really, I felt good about being an American. It was a very positive time. And one time I was watching a Yankee game, believe it or not, and it must have been the playoffs maybe or something. And they showed the national anthem, right? Usually, that would happen during a commercial and they just come when the game starts. But like I said, it was the playoffs or something. So they showed the singing the national anthem. And I guess I kind of really listened to it for the first time. And I realized that the national anthem ends in a question. Did you realize that?
Huh. Oh, say, can you see? Yeah. Question mark. Yeah.
Oh, say, does that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave? It's a question.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I just started kicking that around. I was like, well, nobody's come here and planted a flag. But is it still the land of the free, the home of the brave? I just started, I don't know, thinking about it. And I thought about, well, it doesn't stay there by itself. And I felt the duty to serve. That's when I knew I was going to join the military. Like I said, I chose the Marines to freak out my friends.
Right.
It's funny. I was 17 years old when I graduated. So, I needed when I graduated, but also when I wanted to sign up, which was November of my senior year. So I signed up almost a full year before I went in on the delayed entry program. And I was 17 and I needed my parents' permission. And they didn't, my dad didn't really want me to go in.
Oh, wow.
So he tried all these ways to convince me to not join. He's like, John Wayne served in every American war. He's never joined the military. He said, my Uncle Bill knew some guy who worked at NBC, so he's like, what if I told you I could have you on TV in a year? Have Uncle Bill talk to his friend at NBC. I'm like, you can't promise that. So I eventually convinced them to sign me up. And yeah, I went to boot camp when I was 17 after graduating.
Man, oh man. So 4 years serving in the Corps.
Mm-hmm.
When you got back, so you're what, 21, 22 now when you get back?
Yep.
And you end up in New York, is that correct?
Yeah, I went to New York to be an actor. That's what I
actor.
wanted to do. Yeah, that was what I wanted to do. So, but I really had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
So I did what, I could immediately do was if you brought 3 friends to, any of the local comedy clubs on open mic night, you could get on stage. So I just started, I just started writing material and doing little open mic nights. But that is, man, talk about a hard gig. That's a tough gig. I was kind of stupid. I didn't realize that, you could change your material every night. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you could keep doing the same material every night. So I was always writing material.
Oh, man.
And so that was kind of off and on again. And until I met a guy who was putting together a band and he wanted to bring punk back. And I was always a big fan of, the Ramones, the Clash, stuff like that. And I played in a bunch of bands growing up. And even in the Marines, I had a couple bands. So that kind of kicked things off in 92. We thought we were going to be spearheading punk. And so we started doing that. It was in New York, like you said, New York City. We had no idea what was going on the West Coast, though, like with Green Day and all this other stuff.
I was just going to say.
I remember heading the night before one of our rehearsals. We rehearsed like 2-3 times a week. And I was watching 120 Minutes with Matt Pinfield on MTV. And he played Basket Case, I think it was.
Oh,
and I was like, oh man. I went to Tower Records the next day, or HMV. It was HMV on the Upper West Side, and I bought Dookie, and I brought it into rehearsal. I'm like, guys, somebody's out there doing it already. And then they played Woodstock and blew up, But we kept at it for almost 10 years together. We had a little change of personnel and name change, like several years in. But I gave it a good run, and then it was time for another change. But one of the greatest things. Sorry, Jason, I cut you off. One of the greatest things.
I think I was going to set you up for exactly what you're going to say now. That the culmination of the 10-year punk rock odyssey is that you met Dana.
Dana, actually.
Oh, Dana.
Yeah, I met my wife Dana one night playing at CBGB.
Of all places.
Yeah. Yep, that was it.
Okay, so we have to have this story. We have to have this story.
Okay, well, July 11th, 1998, we were playing, we used to play at CBGB quite often, at least once a month. One night I just, looked from the stage and I saw this girl, and I was like, you can't spend all your time looking at one person, so you got,
right.
you got to spread the love, you know what I mean? But I definitely locked on to her and was just like, wow, who's that? And then, after we finished our set, you have about 5 minutes to go thank people for coming and stuff like that. And then you got to take your stuff down, so the next band can get up there and play. But I came off the stage and I'm looking for her. And then there she is with my drummer's girlfriend. I'm like, oh, they know each other. So I said hi to the drummer's girlfriend, and she said, this is my friend Dana. And I said, Dana? She's like, yeah. I said, so we kind of were introduced, could only talk for a minute or so. And I had to go do my thing, and they split. And I don't know, the next day I called Beth, the drummer's girlfriend, and I said, hey, what's up with that girl, Dana? And she says, well, she was asking about you.
Oh,
and I said, well, you make sure she's at the next show. And she came to the next show we were at. I think it was Arlene Grocery down in Soho. And we've been inseparable ever since. We were married less than 2 years later. And now we've been, let's see, it'll be 25 years, married 25 years in May.
Huzzah, man. Oh, man.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. So, yeah, I will take that any day, all day.
Oh, yeah.
No matter the kind of regrets or whatever, or things I missed or didn't do, right when we were playing in the band, or, maybe, sometimes I think about you lost all that time when you could have been acting. But you know what? I wouldn't trade 1 second of it because it led to that.
Yeah. And this is something because music is its own form of storytelling too. I mean, the songs. I'm assuming you wrote some songs. I'm assuming it, even though it maybe not be narrative in the same way that a play or a film is. It's story. It's art, and I know that you like believe in art to your core. And as we've chatted, you mentioned a couple times something like you have stories around Braveheart or Band of Brothers, moments in your life where the power of art really revealed itself to you. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. You're talking about the transformative power of art.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly believe in that. And you're absolutely correct. It could be a song, it could be a film, a poem, a sculpture, a painting, no matter what it is. It can, when something touches you to your core. When I talk about, for instance, Braveheart or Band of Brothers, those were two things that literally shifted the direction of my life. We can touch on that, talk about
Yeah.
that in a moment. But I'd like to talk just a bit more about, how things can really hit you in the core. Think about your favorite song. Think about the songs you go to when you feel a certain way or need to feel a certain way, right? Wow. I mean, I've been listening to, I don't know if you're familiar with Steven Wilson Jr. He's a new artist or relatively, let's put it this way. He's risen to the level where people that aren't really into music are starting to hear about him. So I'm sure he's been around a long time. I just heard about him
Of
about,
course.
6 months ago or something.
Yeah.
But I'm listening to his record lately, and man, so many things that just touch on my childhood. There's a lot of songs about his father. And, we all have these little touchstones and can relate in different ways. Him, particular for me, his stuff is speaking to me right now at a really base level. So when you find those things that have kind of a psychological or emotional match, you know what I mean? Where it just kind of links up and you're like, boom. And then, you hear that kind of, that perfect tone, that bong, there it is, you know? Yeah, man, we'll talk about Braveheart and Band of Brothers. Those were the things I needed at those particular times. Braveheart came along at a period of my life that was pretty kind of dark, just, I mean, for me, everything's relative. I've had a pretty okay life. I ain't complaining. I'm just saying that I wasn't in the best place, emotionally, psychologically. And I felt disconnected from society, this is post-service, you kind of, you don't have that same camaraderie, even though, I was playing in the band and all that stuff. And, there was that, but I didn't feel connected in that way. I felt like all the things I thought were important to me, things like duty and honor, didn't matter in the real world. So there was a disconnect. I started feeling like the odd man out. Like, why do I care about that stuff? And nobody else does. You know what I mean? So I felt like I was the stupid one. I remember I went to see Braveheart, and I immediately went to see it again the next day.
Oh,
So I
wow.
sat through it twice in 2 days. And then I saw it again when it came out. They re-released it before Oscar season because I think it originally was released early in the year, like post-Oscars. So they released it again, like to kind of get people excited about it for the Oscars. And I brought my drummer along to see it too. He was from Ireland. And it just reinforced me like, I'm not stupid. I'm not weird. I'm not wrong. These things are important, you know? So it just kind of reawakened that in me. And I started to want to be better rather than wallow in whatever garbage I was wallowing in. You know what I mean? So, and it wasn't immediate. It wasn't like, boom, I turned my life around or whatever. It was just a little course correction, right? Getting me back on azimuth, just a little kick towards my true north again.
Yeah.
And I can literally, like, I don't know why that I don't know why I noticed it. This is obviously with the benefit of hindsight, but I can trace everything back to that period of time where I decided that I wasn't just gonna, BS and drink myself to death, Yeah, man. So that was big. Braveheart's big. I'll be for whatever faults a man has, I'll be forever grateful to Mel Gibson for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Band of Brothers, man, talk about another just gigantic shift in the world. That, I don't know if you remember, Band of Brothers premiered on the Sunday night before 9/11, which happened
Right.
on
Yeah.
Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
And I had started watching it, and 9/11 happened. We lived in New York. First plane flew right by my wife's window at work. We lived down in the village, so we were about a mile north of the towers. Crazy period of time, and I knew we were going to war. I don't think they showed it for maybe the next week or maybe even 2 weeks after 9/11 because everything was in such kind of chaos. But
Right.
when it came back on, I watched it, and it made me feel better. It just made me feel like, okay, we got this. America. We have good people serving. We're going to be able to come back and do what we need to do. And I knew immediately that I recognized the power of that. And I said, wow, man, there's not just good stuff, quality stuff coming out of Hollywood, but there's a potential for important stuff. And that was very important to me at the time,
Oh,
to be able
yeah.
to take that comfort from that. So that kind of just tucked away in the back of my head. Now I'd left my band at that point or shortly after, I can't really remember. But around that time, that's when I started getting into voiceover. So I was kind of on the transition from music to acting.
Yeah.
And then in 2003, I heard that HBO was going to make The Pacific, the miniseries about the Marines,
Right.
by the same people who did Band of Brothers. And I'm like, I'm getting in this. I said, I'm getting in this. This is important. I want to be a part of it. And it's funny. My son was born in 2002. We had just bought an apartment on West 10th and right off Bleecker in the West Village. And my son wasn't maybe not even a year old yet. And we had been out to Los Angeles about 18 months earlier on my wife's business. And I remember we were on the 405 and she's like, I could never live out here,
Oh, no.
But that's when I had to go home and ask her, if she would quit her job. She had a great job in advertising. I was doing well in voiceover. And did she want to sell the place and move to California so I could try to be in the Pacific? Try to be an actor,
Right.
And she is, we're sitting at the kitchen table, our tiny little kitchen table, which was right, you walk in the kitchen, the stove and the table are here and the bathroom door is right here. It's
Right.
like this tiny little apartment. And she's like, wait, you want me to quit my job? We're going to sell this place that we just bought and we're going to go to California. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh boy. She's like, oh boy.
Why did I go to CBGB's that night?
Right. But, God bless her. She looked at me. She goes, is this what you want to do? And I said, yeah. She's like, all right, let's do it.
Wow.
So we had been in that apartment 6 months and we sold it, actually made a nice little profit off it. And that enabled us to move to Los Angeles. Now, I know for all the listeners, like, oh, wow, so you got in the Pacific. No, I couldn't even get an audition. Because I had no idea how the business worked. But I leaped immediately into acting classes and I continued my voiceover career. I got an agent out in Los Angeles as well and started getting after it until I got my first role on 24 in 2006.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a second too, because I watched every episode of 24. When I saw that in your bio, I was like, oh, I have to go back. But I think what was a perfect little wrap up, Michael, that you started by talking about the transformative power of art. And here we go with a miniseries that moves you so foundationally that you have to literally uproot your life to pursue just the chance of contributing to another piece of art that might do that for other people. I mean, that's how it's literally transformative, right? Sometimes we can talk in like very esoteric, la 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 language about art and the beauty of this and that and the importance of stuff. But this is logistics. Like this is hardcore literal life choices you're making simply based on the literal transformation of you inside emotionally by this piece of art. Am I overstating that? Or I mean, that's
No, not at all.
like.
No, you said it. You stated it very, very clearly and correctly. Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah,
why that's why I wholeheartedly believe in the transformative power of art.
yeah. It's the new metric, right? Did my voiceover commercial make someone move? If it didn't, I think I. One of my pieces of art that did that for me, Michael, was the book Shogun. I was working at a shoe repair shop on a summer between like sophomore, junior year in college, and had so much downtime between resoling boots that I read Shogun, and that book blew my mind open. Just in terms of understanding different perspectives, different people who live in the world in different ways. I mean, those kind of experiences are so invaluable, so invaluable.
For sure.
But I make light, but did I read this right? Your first voiceover was you became the voice of Arm & Hammer. Am I?
Well, that was my first big one. Yeah, my
Okay.
first commercial ever that I did. It was for Volkswagen. It was a radio spot, and it was an ensemble piece, and I played one of the. I believe it was the Jetta that got away or something like that. And it was, and it had this, like the golden era of VO. The guys like, hear the greatest hits about the Jetta that got away, and then we had a bunch of people singing like fake songs,
Oh, right, like
and
yeah.
and I was one of the singers on that. So yeah, that was my first gig. But not long after that, I booked the role of, or the to be the voice of Arm & Hammer. There was like the Arm & Hammer logo, but it had like a head and arms and legs. It was like an animated little dude. I did that whole series of Yuck versus Yum commercials back in the 90s or in the 2000s rather. The difference between Yuck and Yum, that was all those, and yeah, it was great, man. And I'll tell you what, when you get an account like that, at least in those days, now everything's so not filtered, but what's the word I'm looking for? Diluted, across cable and everything else. But back then, that was all Class A play. They play it during the soap operas and Oprah and all that stuff for all the stay-at-home moms and stuff. So the Arm & Hammer, the cleaning products and the baking soda and all that stuff, it was all day long, And so I was like, wow, this is easy and good. Like all of a sudden I'm making all this money. But, hey, it allowed us to get into our first apartment and all that. And then we, obviously built everything off of that. Yeah, man, it's good work when you can get it, boy. That voiceover stuff.
Michael, we were just talking about you breaking into voiceover, Arm & Hammer, Jetta. You also, of course, were a punk rocker, songwriter, which I will stick a pin in that because I want to ask you about that. Well, you're also a theater actor, and you're also a TV actor. And I'm just wondering, in terms of like the storytelling, the reaching an audience, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you're selling, entertaining, educating, whatever. What kind of muscles are similar and what are totally different? Like when you're preparing to do a voiceover, what's that character analysis like? How do you kind of prepare a script that is trying to sell baking soda or a car versus what is in your heart, mind, soul when you're writing a song versus when you're when you're on set, given brand new lines and you have to kind of bring a character to life? Are there points of intersection? This is kind of a bigger question than I realized it was going to be when I started. Are there points of intersection in how you prepare as a performer, actor, storyteller, whatever umbrella you want to put on yourself? Where does your method come from? How does it then bleed into these different versions of connecting to an audience?
Well, while I have written a couple of songs, I wouldn't consider myself a songwriter. When we were playing, the singer was the main songwriter. And in those 8 years we worked together, I wrote 2 songs,
Okay.
So I wouldn't consider myself a songwriter. However, I'll see if I can still touch on all that other stuff. With voiceover, voiceover is a different animal. It's certainly with commercial voiceover, which is where the lion's share, 98% of my work came doing commercial work. And that's about breaking down the copy being the script that you're given. You've got to know what's important to the people who are selling what you're talking about. So you have to, billboard certain things in the copy in order to drive a point home, whether it's, you hear it day in and day out, this week only, or, whatever it is,
Right.
for a limited time, right? Or, so there are certain things you have to, when you break down the copy, you analyze the copy, you say, okay, I got to hit this a little harder. I got to drive that. I got to push this a little farther, undersell this bit that, when we're talking about side effects,
Right. Side effects may include.
But more importantly than anything, you got to realize that you're talking to one person.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to picture that person in your mind. At least that's the way I work. I imagine the person I'm talking to. I imagine who is the person that would buy this, right? And I speak directly to that person. Now, obviously, there are sometimes scripts will call for a character type or something like that, and they're looking for a little something. But when they just hire Michael Broderick because they like the way I sound or whatever, I'm just talking to that one person I think might buy this. And it personalizes it for the listener, hopefully. If you're successful at it, that's what it does. And it, when people hear that and like, oh, I do need that toe cream.
How did he know?
I didn't want to tell anybody about it, but I kind of feel better.
He knows my darkest secret.
Right. So whatever it is, whether it's toe cream or a new car, you're talking to that person that just needs that little, hey man, that little nudge to go to the store, go to the car dealership and get what they need. That's it, man. Now, as far as presenting music, man, that's one I do miss that. I do miss that energy of the live performance, especially, in the kind of music I was playing. It's a very interactive experience. I feed off the audience. I do the same in my acting when I would have the opportunity to go on a producer session, or if you walk in for a guest star and you see there's 6 people in the room, the writer's there and so-and-so's there. Oh God, man, I love that more than anything because it allows you to change on the fly. Like if you're locked in, look, I'm locked in with the reader, but if like peripherally, I can see nobody, there's no movement and whatsoever, or there's like people are just, then I do something, I'll do something to shake it up. However, I remember in particular, this just came to mind. I had a guest star on NCIS, and I remember in the producer session, I'm in it with the reader, we're locking eyeballs, but out of the corner of my eye, after one little thing I did, I see kind of somebody nod and lean over and talk to the person next to them, and I'm like, let's stay on that track. Boom, let's lean into that a little harder. And I booked it. I left the room. I just booked that. And so that. I thrive off that immediate feedback, especially in music. It's one of the things I miss. I don't play live anymore. I haven't played in a band in years, but thinking back, that was the greatest part of it. Just the energy from the crowd.
That has to be really different though on set, right? For TV or film, because there is everyone present. They're not audience. They're all working.
Yeah, right? They go away. Meaning like in your mind, they go away. Right. Then it's absolutely just diving into your scene partner's eyeballs and getting to work.
You have to hit your mark. You have to know what the camera shot is, but then you have to just release all that and be completely present with your scene partner, because that camera can drill right in. You don't have to reach for it. It'll come to you.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because sometimes there are things logistically that get in the way of that. Like the first time I learned that was on Justified. I did 2 episodes, but in the first episode I did, I'm a state trooper and I'm pulling over one of the main characters or whatever. And the cameraman is in the passenger seat in the footwell, you know what I mean? Like shooting across the driver up at me I'm outside the car. Now I had to basically, get hands on knees and get low enough so that they could see me. Right. And it was unnerving at first because I'm like, I wouldn't do that. But they're like, it doesn't matter what you do. It looks good for
Right.
camera. You know what I mean? They can't if they can't see you, if you're standing up like, upright, and who gives? So it's, an early lesson as an actor, it's not what's realistic, it's what works for the shot.
Yeah. It's what
And
looks realistic, even if it's completely fabricated. Yeah.
exactly. And even if, in the master or the shot from outside the car, I'm upright. Doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Got to get down. Get in that window. So
And that's where a good continuity director is vital, because if it's too obvious that the shots don't match up, you can take the audience out of it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, well, hey, man, they had things on lock over there at Justified, boy. That was a good show. But so, all those little things I picked up along the way early in my career that well, it's part of it, right? It's part of just kind of that kind of novice to journeyman, and I'm still in that journeyman section.
Yeah.
Eventually, will you, do you ever master acting? I don't know. But, that's what you're striving for.
So you've been on 24, NCIS, True Detective, Justified. These are all, kind of in that. I'm sure you do a lot of kind of military. You just had a premiere of a film where you were, again, veteran military, a lot of guns, a lot of shows. These shows are all kind of thriller, violence. I'm guessing you maybe have died on screen a few times.
Oh yeah. I'm never coming back to a lot of shows.
Can you give us like the quick, give us the merry-go-round of Michael Broderick's favorite death scenes, like the methods, what you had to do, and what's it like to do a death scene? Are they fun? Are they complicated? Is it different depending on the method of your passing?
Yeah, they're all different. Sometimes they involve a stunt person, sometimes they don't. Let's see. I'm just trying to run them down in my head. On The Mentalist, I got shot in the face at point blank range.
Oh, jeez.
I'm a cop sitting in a car, and the guy who I think is a friendly comes up, and I'm like, hey, what's up? And he just puts a gun to my head and executes me. Then, and I'll tell you what, that was a little tricky because, as we all know now with the horrible situation with Rust, right?
Yeah.
Now, just being former military, I'm all about the gun safety. And I made sure that every take, I had them show me that this weapon was safe and empty and everything else, because I'm not letting some actor put a gun to my head. And I think maybe one or two people were getting annoyed that every time I was, I'm like, if it leaves my sight, I'm not letting you do that. So show me again. Thank you. But yeah, so that was no problem. But so I was shot in the face there. I was shot in the head with an AK round in True Detective. Sorry to spoil it for people. That was took an AK round to the head, and that my head exploded in American Horror Story. An alien made my head explode. They don't like my head for some reason.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we got like a theme going here.
And there are more. I'm trying to remember, and it's slipping my mind, Jason. I don't want to take too much time trying to remember, but there's at least two more that I'm not coming back to.
Right. Your time on that show is done. Oh my gosh. Speaking of True Detective, though, because I know this is an important one to you. As we've talked and we were preparing for this, you mentioned how getting on that show next to a 2-time Academy Award-winning performer was a real sense of, if not necessarily I've made it, but I'm doing it.
Yep.
Right. There was exactly validation there. Yeah. Tell me that story.
Well, like you said, I was in season 3 of True Detective. 4 episodes of that, I played Special Agent John Bowen, FBI agent who, with his partner, was sent to the town to work with the local cops on the case. And it was my second day shooting. The first day, I just had to manipulate a prop or whatever. It was a ransom note. And I got to work with Mahershala Ali and Stephen Dorff. But it wasn't much of a scene. So quick day. Second day is we did a lot of the bullpen stuff where we're in looking at the evidence and this, that, and the other thing, sitting around talking about the case. And there were some meaty scenes there. And the way it was set up, I'm sitting on a desk across from Herschel Ali, 2-time Academy Award winner. He's sitting on the other desk, and we're going back and forth about the case. And we're butting heads a little bit. The characters are. And we do the first couple of takes, and then we stop, and they got to reset, change the cameras. And I'm looking across at Mahershala, and I flashed back to that moment where I'm sitting across from my wife in the kitchen on 10th Street in New York saying, I want you to drop everything and I want to go be an actor. And I was like, man, look at me. I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And it was, man, what a moment. And I just got to kind of sit with that and soak it in and really appreciate not just the opportunity, but appreciate the boldness that it took, and to acknowledge that and say, hey, man, boldness pays. It doesn't always pay, but because sometimes I think I'm a little timid about certain things. And that was one of the times in my life where I'm saying, man, you just shook your whole life up. Now, obviously, this was years later after I'd done so, but it was flashing back to that moment where I said, man, you took a giant leap. And God bless Dana. She came along for the ride. My son didn't have a choice. He was only one at the time.
Right.
but it does pay off. If you believe in yourself and you take big, bold swings at the piñata, it can pay off. And I was just so grateful in that moment that it did.
I think this is a really important point, Michael, that for storytellers of all stripes here, because it's hard. It's not easy to pursue art. I recently watched the documentary The Greatest Night in Pop about the night they recorded
We Are the World.
We Are the World, right? And it had all these gigantic stars in the same room. And it was fascinating to watch, like how timid Bob Dylan was, how he needed help from Stevie Wonder to find his voice for that line. To watch them all going up to each other to ask Bruce Springsteen asking Cyndi Lauper for her autograph, right? That we can lose sight of the fact that even the big stars are also just humans, that they also had their moment in the kitchen one day where they decided, I got to go do this thing. Your story reminds me of, it was one of my first equity contracts. I'm in a little bit part with a musical theater in State Fair. And I have like one or two scenes with like the lead guy that they brought in from New York, who'd been in Phantom of the Opera, like the guy. Mm-hmm. And he's in St. Louis slumming it for the summer because, New York doesn't, the season, but he wants his lead role in the summer. And I'm on stage with him thinking, he's not blowing me off the stage. I mean, he's clearly, it wasn't like a, ho, I'm so awesome. It was I can do this.
Right.
I can do it.
You're holding your own.
I had the same feeling. I was in a not very good movie, I won't name it, with Aaron Eckhart. And I had my scene with Aaron Eckhart, my half day of shooting. And same thing, just like, he's a guy. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who takes his work seriously. And if he were to meet Jack Nicholson, he'd probably be starstruck too. Right. So I think this is an important, that to your point, Michael, to take those moments when we have these moments of self-aware recognition that, oh my God, I'm doing it, to not in a precious, egotistical way, but in a way of appreciating what you just said, that the boldness paid off. The work is happening. I belong. Right. I'm not nuts, basically. I think it's important for anyone out there who's also writing, singing, acting, dancing, doing whatever, sculpting, that when those moments happen, because they always do, at some point, you'll have that moment of, I'm doing it, and to really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that's really what it was for me, as far as just recognizing it and, just being grateful that I took the shot, and grateful that, my wife came along for the ride.
All right, Michael, this has been so cool. Before we get to the wrap though, you had mentioned something about Keith Richards and his approach to playing guitar and songwriting, and how this idea actually informs your acting. And I would love to just tee that up for you and have you talk about that for a minute.
Oh, well, years ago, I heard so this is third hand because I heard Warren Zevon tell this story about Keith Richards. Okay.
All right.
Warren Zevon, made famous, with the Werewolves of London, right?
Yep.
Great musician, songwriter. Anyway, he was on the radio and he was telling a story about how Keith Richards talks about when he's playing guitar or writing a song, he thinks of it as a painting. And he said some people like to cover the entire canvas with different colors and splashes and this and that. They'll cover the whole thing. He likes to leave spaces where the canvas shines through, where there's nothing on it. And Warren gave the example of Start Me Up, right? And it has these little stops and starts and stops and starts. And I loved that. And I tried to, I heard this has got to be 30 years ago. So I tried to incorporate that in my own playing, when I was playing in the band. But also as it pertains to acting, I look for those spaces where the writing allows the actor to fill it with something of their own creation.
Yeah.
I'll give an example. In this film, I just went to a private screening of it, the film I worked on over the summer. There's a space where, my character is a veteran and his son asks him, how come you don't talk about that much? And my line is, there's not much to tell. But there's space there to think of something very specific, right? Before you deliver that line. And I was so glad when I saw it on the screen that it worked, right? Now I call that now obviously I filled it with something, but I call it a blank space because I don't get to decide what people think I'm thinking of. So it's a blank and people get to fill it with whatever they think I'm thinking of. It's like the Tarantino talks about what's in the briefcase, right? The glowing briefcase, right? He's never going to say, because it doesn't matter what he thinks is in there. It matters what everybody else thinks is in there. So I relish these moments or these opportunities, I should say, when the writing allows for me to fill a space with something that is open to interpretation. So those are those kind of blank spaces that I think about that Keith Richards reference. And I think it adds a richness for the observer, the audience participant, the receiver of the art, when we get to put ourselves in there in some way, that's what really creates the connection.
Yeah. In a real way, you're trusting the audience.
Exactly.
Right? There's an implicit trust there of you're participating with me in the experience of the story.
For sure. And those are the moments I look for in writing, when I'm breaking down a script, or I don't always recognize it until we're in the moment on set.
Of course, right. You mean on the page, right?
I'm just going to take that second and just get deep with something and let the camera read it. And it worked there are two particular times I tried to achieve that in this film I worked on called The Militia. And I was so grateful that they both worked. Because, you can't 100% control your face, and you don't know which take they're going to use. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. How they're going to edit you out.
Exactly. So it wasn't until I saw it back and I said, no, thank goodness that worked. That worked. And it was exactly what I was going for. They chose the right take. And so I was very happy with that.
This is great. I'm going to spring another topic on you here really quick, just because as you talk about this, it reminds me of our work together on Last Out, just two-part question here. One, what's it like being a vet doing a project like this, which has a very specific mission to bring healing to both veterans and communities to understand the true cost of war? And then on this idea of space, that I hadn't thought of it this way, but there are so many opportunities for you to have space in this play. I'm thinking of the moment where Danny Patton considers suicide. I'm thinking of the moment where Danny Patton has descended basically into hell and is trying to figure out how to clamber back out. On the page, it's very simple. Danny's in a closet with a gun. or
Mm.
Danny is facing hell and the Banyans shriek, and your dialogue is really, really spare. Really spare. There's very little for you to say, but on stage, like and again, I'm speaking for myself. I feel like we have carved something really gorgeous by taking all this space with music and time and light, and it's your job to fill that emotionally. Is this kind of in the same world as what you're talking about? And what is it like to build those spaces, both in rehearsal and then also to have to rebuild it each time in performance?
Well, it is similar. I hadn't considered that because both the examples you cite, they are they're lengthy, meaning, compared to what I was talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it is a lot to fill. And I don't think you can get away with faking any of that, as far as you've got to be thinking real thoughts, feeling real emotions. I consider myself a Meisner guy. So it's all about, the emotional life of the character.
Mhm.
And in those particular instances, man, it's gosh, just what an awful place to be emotionally and psychologically for Danny. I don't I don't know how much I want to. It's difficult for me to talk about. Just
Yeah.
yeah, and plus I don't, those things belong to me. I don't want to.
Oh, of course.
No, I know you understand, but just for your audience, you think awful things. You think about awful things, and so it's that's the work as an actor. It is. I didn't used to think it was hard work until I really started doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah. The audience doesn't always understand the true cost of what the artist has to pay for that story or that entertainment.
Yeah, it takes a toll. Nothing that you can't, recover from.
Yeah.
Even in just a few moments or minutes. But it certainly, yeah. I'm trying to remember this quote from. Oh gosh, now my brain is totally farting out of me.
I munched
Who's
you
it?
up. I'm sorry.
You did. Who's the actor? Capote.
Oh, Truman. Oh, no, Philip Seymour Hoffman or the other
Philip
one.
Seymour Hoffman. Thank you.
Okay. There was two that came out like at the same time.
Yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman. I think he said, "Great art or great acting is torture."
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes you feel that it's especially in those situations you were talking about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there's one of the things I like about Last Out. It runs the gamut. There's joy, there's sorrow, there's love, all so many great highs and lows, but those are certainly the darkest parts of it. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to flex those muscles, even when it's difficult.
Yeah. Just hop on the ride.
That's right.
Michael, thank you so much for your vulnerability and just sharing all this. Learning by doing, for sure.
Mm.
We're going to do the quick wrap here.
Yeah.
I always like to end with a couple pieces of advice and a spotlight for you. So, advice number 1: what is the best advice that you have ever taken?
The best advice I'd ever taken actually came from a YouTube video, and and it was shortly before I went into an audition. I think either someone sent it to me, or maybe I was looking up something, that while I was killing time waiting to go in. And it was a clip, I'm sure you've probably seen it, from Bryan Cranston, where he's in a tuxedo at some awards show, and somebody asked him, like, what changed things for him in his career. And he talks about just going in and presenting the work. I don't want to misquote him, but he's basically saying how the audition is the job.
Yeah.
That's the job. And he's like, the only thing you can control is what you do in the room. And so go in, present your work, and walk away.
Yeah.
And he said, when he did that, my career turned around. And that just had a big effect on me. I was like, wow, he's exactly right. All you can control is what you do in the room. Now, sometimes you screw it up, whatever. And that's when you do your third audition. Are you familiar with the idea of 3 auditions? There's
I
the one
actually am not.
there's the one you prepare. There's the one you do in the room, and there's the one you do on the way home in the car.
Yes, I have not heard that, but it is so true.
Yeah. So if you can avoid doing that one on the way home in the car because you think you could do it better. So yeah, I love that advice of just leaving it in the room and not worrying so much about what they think or what they want. Present what you want, right? And then, if you're right for it, great. But I think it lent me just a boost of confidence to say, hey, this is what I'm bringing. You called me in here for a reason. I'm Michael freaking Broderick.
What star? See, I called it.
I was the right height.
Exactly. Yes.
But no, but what I mean is, it just gave me that confidence of just being like, hey, this is what I do. You can like it or you can not. I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
Because it's funny. I think was it you that asked me? Exactly right. You can't. So it's a silly game. And it's a mental game that takes you out of that. It impedes your preparation.
Yep.
So did you ask me? I can't remember. Somebody asked me recently about, do I watch stuff that I've done? And I said, yes, I said, yes, I do. I always watch what I do. Sometimes that's the only bit of a show that I'll watch, I'll watch when I'm in it. What I don't do though, that some of my peers do, is like go watch the episode that I didn't get to see what what they want. Like, I don't care.
Right.
Like, now after that video, I don't care what they ended up going with. It doesn't matter to me. It's off my radar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that point to that conversation.
That's fantastic. There's a whole thing I hear about releasing expectation, and that's so great. Now, we were chatting a little bit, and my second advice is always, what's the worst advice you've ever given? But you claim not to give a whole lot of advice. So we'll just turn that around. What's the worst advice you've ever taken?
Ooh, the worst advice I've ever taken. Try the fish. No, yeah,
We've all been there.
That's it, man.
Michael, thank you so much for all of this. I just want to turn the spotlight on you. If people want to learn more, see your episodes, what do you have coming up? Just let us know how to find you and how to follow you.
Well, you can always visit my IMDb to see what I've been on. And, you can look up. A lot of it's playing on Netflix or Prime or whatever. So you can go back and see all those NCISs or, Justifieds or whatever. But I'm on Instagram at that Broderick. Not the other one, that Broderick.
That one, not this one.
That's right. At that Broderick on Instagram. Come visit, come say hello, and I'll say hello back.
Awesome. I'm going to put those links right in the show notes, everybody. And Michael, again, thanks so much. And I can't wait, wherever our next Last Out tour stop is, I can't wait to see you in person again. And thank you for coming on and sharing all this with us. Really appreciate it.
Looking forward to it, Jason. And thanks for having me on. And, just keep on, brother.
You've been listening to the Page and Stage podcast. All my thanks to this week's guest and to all of you out there for listening. If you enjoyed or found value in this podcast, please tell at least one other person. Word of mouth has always been and will always be the best marketing tool in the world. You can learn more about all my guests and access their websites and projects in the show notes. And hey, feel free to send me your thoughts, your comments, your questions at jason@pageandstage.art. I always love to hear from you, and I might just even feature your questions on future episodes. This podcast is built with Alitu, the all-in-one podcasting app created by the amazing team over at thepodcasthost.com. Thank you again for listening. And until next time, I'm Jason Cannon, and I cannot wait to hear your story.